Hello everyone and welcome to our North Shore Candidates Town Hall. با درود به همه شرکت کنندگان گرامی. Thank you for joining us. My name is Shervin Shariari and I'll be your moderator tonight. And please call me Shervin. If all goes well, we aim to end this session by approximately 7:45. Okay. First, I would like to introduce Mr. Abbas Sedqi, who spearheads the Saraye Iran organization. Mr. Sedqi has 35 years in strategic leadership on global projects, and he's founded cultural organizations in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and in Vancouver, BC. He's been residing in Vancouver since 2007 and is currently the Secretary General of the Saraye Iran, or the Society of Iranian Origin Canadians. Mr. Sedqi, could you please go ahead?
Hi everyone, thank you very much. It's an honor and privilege to start first meeting with the candidate in North Vancouver, particularly with you dear esteemed guests and participants. I would like to welcome your attendance and hope your participation in today's discussion will help voters to cast their votes with more knowledge and familiarity with the esteemed candidate and their views. In this part, I would like to brief you about Legal Saraye's character, vision, and mission. Saraye Iran Canada Society is a non-profit organization registered in 2016 and under this Act of British Columbia. The society's key objective is to increase civic engagement of Iranian Canadians and encourage community volunteerism through various political channels. In alignment with this objective, the society is planning such meeting to introduce our community to political candidates and increase participation of Iranian Canadian in upcoming October 24th BC election. We appreciate all those who have served their last days, lives for British Columbia and Canada during the wildfire and during the COVID-19, all of them that they work for people. We respectfully remember the youngest founding members of the group, Amir Sedqi, who died last year at the age of 26, saved the people and forests of BC, the legacy of devoted young man who sacrificed his life for his people and country. I would like to introduce our board members that they work hard to arrange this meeting. First of them, Dr. Kati Rahnawardi. She is member of the board and president. She is a family physician in Vancouver, and she had been active in social area from coast to coast, from Halifax to Victoria. Second, Mr. Dariush Saberi, member of board and vice president. Mr. Manusher Azizi, please raise your hand. Member of board at the position Public Relation Director. Mr. Amir Bajikian, member of board at the position Immigrants Community Coordinator Director. And another one, Mr. Masoud Kashani, member of board and Newcomers Helper Director. And finally, Mr. Shervin Shariari, member of board of director for developing relations with government and member of Legislative Assembly. He is a lecturer at the Langara School of Management. He is tonight non-partisan, independent moderator and is not affiliated with any political parties. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sedqi. So welcome everyone. So first we will do a quick intro from each of our candidates on the panel. Then we will move on with the questions on the topics of post-pandemic economic recovery, internationally trained physicians, and transit or traffic on the North Shore. We also have one separate question for each candidate following these initial 3 questions. So I ask the candidates to kindly limit your answers to 2 minutes. And I will be showing this if you get close to the 2 minutes so that you can manage your time. And I will use my judgment, and hopefully that will be okay for the purposes of providing additional time should a candidate require to respond to another candidate. Otherwise, we will move on from each question once each candidate has had an opportunity to answer them. This session will be in English. The audience can put in your questions in the chat field. شرکت کنندگان گرامی، در این جلسه شما میتونید سوالاتون رو توی چت بنویسید و اگر از آقای امیر باجکیان به اون اطلاع بدید توی چت، ایشون تقبل کردن که اگه سوالی به فارسی نوشته میشه ایشون ترجمه کنن برای ما.
همچنین پاسخش رو.
بله؟
همچنین پاسخ سوال رو.
پاسخ. If you have a question in Farsi, please enter them in Farsi, and my colleague, Mr. Amir Bajakian, will take care of it. Time permitting, we will for sure go through some of the questions from our audience at the end. And I think I have one already, and we'll be looking forward to those as well. So without further delay, I'm going to get into our introductions. And in the interest of time, please limit it to about 45 seconds, if you don't mind. For each question, I'll let you know which candidates go first, second, and third. So for the introductions, if you can introduce yourself and tell us why you are running in the upcoming provincial election. I will start with Bowen Ma, and then Jane Thornthwaite, and then Rasul Narimani. Bowen?
Thank you. Salam ba Mahamagi, man Bowen Ma, kandidai NDP as North Vancouver Lonsdale baraye majlis hastam. Man az tarafo nokos Fazir John Horgan sobat mikonam. Mamnun baraye davataman. Nasi. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Bowen Ma. I'm the BC NDP candidate for North Vancouver Lonsdale, and I'm so grateful to be joining you all from North Vancouver, the territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. 45 seconds is a little bit quick, so my introduction to you is that I've served as your MLA and as a part of the BC NDP provincial government for 3.5 years so far, and we have done so much together. We've been through so much together as well in our community. I remember the internet blackout of 2019. There was the threat of war between the US and Iran and the tragedy of UIA flight 752, and now of course COVID. But here in British Columbia, we know that we'll get through this pandemic together by taking care of each other, no matter what gets thrown in our way. And that's my commitment to you. That's John Horgan's commitment to you. And that's the BC NDP's commitment to you. That's what our plan is all about. We've been managing the COVID-19 health crisis and improving healthcare services throughout BC as we take care of regular people like you and your families. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Bowen. Jane?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me here. It's an honor, and it's my first all candidates meeting, so might be a little bit rusty. But I'm Jane Thornthwaite. I'm the MLA, or was the MLA until the election was called, for North Vancouver Seymour. I have been the MLA since 2009, And the number one reason why I ran way back in 2009 was to fix the highway interchanges. It took a long time, and three levels of government, as well as two separate federal governments, and the switchovers from municipal governments. But at the end of the day, we got it approved, and it's well underway, and it will definitely help with the traffic and transportation issues that we have here on the North Shore, not just in North Vancouver, Seymour, in the entire North Shore. So it's in the middle of construction at the bottom of the cut right now. It's a bit of a mess still, but we're looking forward to when it's finally done. So that's just an example of some of the accomplishments that I've done. And I've worked very, very hard for the community and for the region, as well as for the province in various roles. And I look forward to discussing them more as we carry on with this evening. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Jane. Rasul?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Rasul. I was born in Iran, in a small town. My father was a farmer. And the reason I am here is education. By default, I was supposed to be a farmer working on the farm, but I was interested in science and technology, and I continued my studies. I got a scholarship from Simon Fraser University. I came to Canada. As I love this country, I have been devoting my time to my society and my community. I am passionate about teaching. I am a facilitator at Science in Action at SFU. We have hosted more than 10,000 students in our workshops. And I am running because I think we should improve our education system. We need a better education system for our province. Our kids are the future of this province, and we should invest more time and energy on them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rasul. So we'll get started with our first question, and we'll go with this order: Rasul, then Jane, then Bowen. The question is about the economy and the economic recovery. What is your vision for the economic recovery in a post-pandemic world? What do you envision that we should do differently from pre-pandemic times to be prepared for similar challenges ahead?
COVID is very interesting. There are so many things that has been is open now. So, for example, I used to work with the Fraser Health Authority with a startup company, and we were trying to sell them a tool, a video conferencing tool, which in which the patient could talk to the doctors, and they communicate without even going to visit the doctor. At that time, it was 5 years ago, and we couldn't actually do the project because of their concern about policy and data concern. But now in COVID, it's so easy. You can easily go and see your doctor. All of a sudden, all these windows opened up, and there are so many companies that have opportunities. And one of the biggest concern is that the American companies are going to use these opportunities. I think we should support the startup companies, the local companies in British Columbia, and give them opportunities and support them to take advantage of this unique opportunity that is out there. These opportunities are in healthcare, in education. For example, when it comes to online teaching, there's lots of ideas. I was talking to a startup company in, it's called Steamoji. They are in Park Royal. They have a great platform, but they didn't have any support from the government. So I think we should identify these opportunities based on the issues that COVID has created, and support companies who are trying to give solutions for those problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasul. So we'll go to Jane.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for the question. One of the first platform items that the BC Liberals brought out for this election campaign was to drop the PST, the provincial sales tax to 0 for 1 year, and then increase it to 3% for the second year, specifically to improve the likes of small businesses and to kickstart the economy. Because what we've seen during COVID, tragically, is that there are many, many small businesses who have been unable to, some of them were forced to close. Certainly if you're a hair salon or a nail salon, you were forced to close, but many of them still had to come up with rent to pay, but they did not have any income. The tourism industry has really, really suffered because of the travel restrictions. So our party, the BC Liberal Party, will put a great emphasis on helping small businesses, including tourism, to kickstart the economy, put more money in the pockets of individuals to help everybody in other words, all families, to be able to buy more and to support our small businesses, because we know our small businesses are the economic drivers and the job generators for our community.
Thank you, Jane. And Owen?
Thank you so much. John Horgan and the BC NDP and I, of course, we believe that now is the time to build an economy that works for everybody. The economic impacts of COVID-19 need to serve as a wake-up call for all of us, because it's really demonstrated clearly how unbalanced our economy was and continues to be unless we fix it. The rich keep getting richer every day, while regular people carry under the stress of how to make it over to the next month. So regular people are working harder and harder, and very wealthy people are getting richer and richer. And British Columbians have told us that as we work to rebuild BC's economy, we can't just go back to the way things were, because it wasn't working for most people. It wasn't working for too many people. BC needs an economy that works for the public good, and this is the moment to make that pivot. So our economic plan has several points. We want to be able to make an economy that benefits everyone. So that's one where everyone can get ahead. We want to make a clean energy economy and future. So our plan will help British Columbians build an economy that respects our province and our planet and secures a clean future in the communities that we love. Our third point is that we want a strong future for resource workers and communities. So we're working with industries and communities and First Nations to make sure we revitalize and modernize those industries, make sure that they're cleaner moving forward and more sustainable. And we also want to become a global producer of low carbon products and services. So focusing on tech, focusing on carbon capture. Fifth, of course, we want to promote the strength of BC small and medium businesses. Small businesses are absolutely the backbone of our economy, and they have suffered so much under COVID-19. We also want to make sure we're training for a changing economy, more tech, and basically for the new future. And of course, we want to help workers stay safe and help them get ahead as well. These are very short answers, so I'm doing my best here. Thank you so much for the chance to
Thank you, Bowen. I'm just going to allow some time if you, Jane, or Rasul have anything to add after you heard each other.
I just have to keep checking to see if I'm on mute or not. No, I for sure agree with what Bowen said with regards to supporting small businesses. One of the things that we can do more of, and we should do more of, as I mentioned before, is to encourage businesses to be successful, and putting extra tax burdens on small businesses really doesn't help them. So I know for a fact that the NDP has increased a lot of taxes over the last 3 years that negatively affect businesses, particularly the employer health tax. And this, in some cases, has made it very difficult for businesses to hire more people. Sometimes they've even had to lay off people, certainly not good for small businesses and maintaining the small businesses in our community. So I will just reiterate that it's very important that we support small businesses in our community because they are the job generators in our community and our economic drivers. So the BC Liberals will continue to release items out of their platform that will support small businesses.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to move on to the next question.
Sorry, can I respond to that?
Owen, go ahead.
I mean, of course, I was waiting to see if Rasu wanted to also to speak, but I think that it's absolutely true that now is not the time to put more burdens on small businesses. And that's why when the pandemic hit, a lot of the increases in taxes that we were planning, because at the time, of course, British Columbia was doing very well economically, but we needed to be able to support services. We actually put all of those tax increases on pause and on hold, and we've delayed them for the entire year because this isn't the right time to increase burdens on businesses. The employer health tax was a very important change though. Prior to that, BC was the only province in Canada that still charged a fixed rate MSP premiums on people. And most of the people who paid MSP premiums were seniors on fixed income, low income workers, and other workers who didn't have jobs that were good enough to provide benefits that covered that cost. And that was $1,800 per year per family in most cases. Those were costs that the BC Liberals put on regular people, and they weren't working for regular people. And that's why we made the transition. But I agree, this is not the time to add more burdens on top of small businesses. And that's why we want to really focus on making sure that they're able to grow.
All right. Rasul, do you have anything to add, or shall I just move on?
No, I just want to add, during pandemics, only the bigger companies like McDonald's, Walmart, they made them lots of money, and we have to reflect on that. And when it comes to, I guess we all agree that we have to support the small businesses, but it's how and when it's going to happen. But yeah, I agree with the.
Okay, thanks, Rasul. And next time you're speaking, I think you may need to speak up a little bit more into your mic, just so that we can all hear you. So I'm just going to go to the next question. Thanks for that discussion on the economy. This question is on the internationally trained physicians, and we'll start with Jane. We'll go to Bowen and then Rasul. So internationally trained physicians, including those trained in Iran, have a long and difficult journey before they can become practicing physicians in BC. Even when they do pass the mandatory exams to prove their knowledge, Ministry of Health denies them access to 84% of the resident physician jobs that are necessary for them to become licensed. What would you do about this?
Well, I definitely think that we have to help. I mean, we have doctor shortages, we have healthcare shortages, we have professional shortages. Canada's willingness to accept immigrants is well-renowned, world-renowned, and obviously I support that. But to have these professionals not working in the capacity that they have been trained for, we definitely have to speed that up. So I definitely support speeding up the process to get these physicians trained up to Canadian standards as quickly as possible. I might add that I would assume that a lot of this is also a federal responsibility, and we would have to work with our federal counterparts to do so.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Bowen?
Thank you. This is actually an issue that I'm very passionate about because so many members of my community, of our community together, have come to talk to me about this. International trained medical graduates are often enticed to come and live here in Canada, and they're enticed by Canada's immigration program to move their whole family here with the idea and the hope and the dream that they actually might be able to create a better life for their family. And then when they get here, they're denied the ability to actually achieve the credentials that they need and the licensing that they need to do the work that they are trained in. It is a huge lost opportunity. I spent the last three and a half years talking to many community members about this, and also relaying my concerns very strongly to the Minister of Health, Adrian Dix. And I told him that there's in particular something going on when it comes to international medical graduates who come from Iran, because there are lots of countries where international medical graduates can fly through the process and become doctors here. But for some reason, those medical graduates from Iran often get stopped partway and not told why they cannot continue at all, or they end up at the end and there aren't enough residency spaces for them. So this is something that I have been talking to Health Minister Adrian Dix for many years now, and I'm glad to say that it definitely made a difference, because our platform, our official platform, specifically talks about ensuring increased immigration participation in the workforce. And we specifically commit to streamlining foreign credential assessments processed by various regulatory bodies, and making sure that there's the ability for foreign trained medical professionals to provide their skills and knowledge here in BC, because we need you. And we definitely are so fortunate to have such incredible, skilled, trained physicians from the Iranian Canadian community. We need to help you through. And I'm glad that it's in our commitment now in our official platform.
Thank you, Rasul.
Well, my cousin came to Canada 5 years ago. She's a psychologist, and she had the same problem. She stayed here for 2 months, and she decided it doesn't worth it to stay here and do all the exams. She went back. Her husband is a doctor too. They are practicing in Iran now. But unfortunately, this problem hasn't been solved. After Sonia became the leader of the Green Party, I had a conversation with her, and she thinks that that's the problem that we should do something about. It is not exactly a provincial issue that, for example, we can solve it at the province level, but it needs a multi-level arrangement. But we studied other models in all over the place, and for example, they have the same situation in Australia and in Germany. In Australia, the doctors, they do an interview, and if the interview goes very well, the doctor starts their practice. If they have weaknesses, they say, okay, you will work with another doctor for a year, something like job shadowing for a year, and they get paid. And during that process, the new doctor is happy, the doctor who's training the other one is happy, and patients are happy. The same, they have the similar system in Germany. The practice is started with something very simple, with some exams. And this is a problem the solution is out there. But we just need to organize and put the pieces together for the British Columbians.
Okay, and I can see some, thank you, Rasul. I can see some chat discussions as well on this topic, and maybe I can ask a follow-up question regarding this, that there was a fast-tracking process for internationally trained Canadian physicians to satisfy shortages caused by COVID-19, and it seems it has gone nowhere. As of July, I know there were no approvals out of this process. Just seems that this process has been stuck, and also, you know, the NDP or Liberal governments, you know, what went wrong that you were not able to make much progress on this? That's my question. Follow-up question.
I was waiting to see if anybody else wanted to take it. So in terms of the fast track process, that was definitely something that Minister Adrian Dix pushed the college to try to get a bylaw through on. Right now, most of the regulatory, the credentialing is actually done by the College of Physicians and Surgeons, which is an autonomous, independent regulatory body. We, of course, provide the framework under which they operate, but they largely make their decisions independent of the government of British Columbia. But there are also many, many challenges, as people will know, in terms of how healthcare credentialing is done and also how regulation of healthcare professionals is done. So one of the major movements forward that our government has been working on is to completely overhaul the way that healthcare professionals are regulated. And it is a big job. It took, there was a study that was commissioned in order to try to dig down into what the problems were. And that took a couple of years, I think 1 year maybe. So there is work happening to try to streamline what's going on over in the College of, not just the College of Physicians and Surgeons, but in all sorts of regulatory colleges when it comes to healthcare. But it is a fundamental challenge that needed a very big overhaul. I mean, this work in particular that I have done on this issue wasn't brought to the attention of the government before me. BC NDP government has been here since 2017, and we set to work to fixing a lot of things left behind by the BC Liberal government. And there were a lot of big fish to fry, even on healthcare alone. We're still recovering from massive cuts that came back in the early 2000s through policies that remained until we were able to remove them a couple of years ago. So we've definitely been moving as quickly as possible on as many issues as possible, but there is a big mountain of them and there's still more to do. And that's why we want to continue.
Thank you, Bowen. Jane, do you want to respond to that?
Well, first of all, there was no cuts in healthcare spending and no cuts at all in education funding. That is all not true. With regards to since 2017, when the BC NDP and the BC Greens combined to become government, they have had actually 3 years to fix this problem, which has not been rectified. So that's on them, not on the BC Liberals. But it's even worse because you would think during a pandemic that we're all trying to do things, maybe I should say fast-tracked, because of the need that we need these physicians, we need these healthcare workers, that maybe some sort of extra emphasis should have been put on the government to allow these physicians to become credentialed during the pandemic. And I know that many factions have been able to fast track decisions that they would not normally have done and did it for the pandemic. I mean, we've got a lot of patios out there at restaurants everywhere, you know, these sorts of things were provided because of the pandemic. So I do know that in serious times like a pandemic, I think serious measures are sometimes needed. So I'm sure if we didn't have this election right now, which is that nobody wants, and it's an unnecessary election, perhaps we would still be in the legislature right now for the fall session, and we could be pushing for these help for these foreign trained physicians to actually get credentialed and up and running at this particular point during the pandemic.
Thank you, Jane. Rasul, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I agree. This is an unfortunate situation that we are in, and I think
speak up, please, Rasul.
I think we should learn from this situation, and now it's time to make changes. Yes, this problem has been out there for forever, and this is a good opportunity. As I said, so many new regulation has been changed through COVID, and I don't see why this one should stay the same.
Thank you. So I'll move on to the next question, which is on transportation and traffic and transit on the North Shore. We'll start with Bowen, and then we'll go to Rasul and then Jane. The North Shore has some of the worst traffic congestions in Metro Vancouver. Recently, the provincial government released its high-level technical feasibility study for extending the region's rapid transit to the North Shore and identified 6 options. when will we move beyond studies and business cases and have something concrete in place? Owen.
Thank you so much. So when I was first running in 2017, I remember the conversation on the North Shore in terms of transportation was all about cars, cars, cars. We need a new bridge for cars and so forth. And over the last couple of years, we've seen a complete transition in the way that we talk about transportation. Now we talk about complete communities and active transportation, and also finding new ways, cleaner ways to move people from A to B. And that's where public transportation becomes so important. And so the work that I've done over the last 3 years to get all the levels of government together to produce the first North Shore transportation plan that is agreed upon by all levels of government, including First Nations and TransLink, was a very important stepping stone to what the next step was, which was this rapid transit study that we initiated in 2019 and finished in 2020. It is actually the first serious study to find a rapid transit solution for the North Shore that has ever been done in British Columbia. I hope you agree. My background's in engineering, and I know that these kinds of studies are very important, of course, in order to make sure that we have good decisions. This study will allow for the North Shore to make its case as to being the next place for a rapid transit project. And we're in a very good place right now to talk about public transit, because for many years, we didn't have necessarily we didn't have a provincial government that was committed to public transit. The BC Liberals didn't want to spend on public transit. That's why there are so many major projects that have been talked about for decades and have been designed for decades that are only just starting right now. And so we do have a long way to go in terms of a rapid transit project for the North Shore, but we're finally moving ahead on the largest investment in public transit in BC history. And with the BC NDP, we will continue to focus on public transit investment.
Thank you so much, Bowen. We'll go to Rasul now and then Jane.
So public transportation is one of the top priorities for the BC Green. We definitely, our party supports the public transportation and engaging the community and active transportation. But unfortunately, as you said, nothing has been changed. And I think it's also the bigger, not only the bigger project, also a smaller project. For example, myself as a person who uses TransLink almost every day but these days I don't go to work, obviously. But before COVID time, I used to go to work by public transit. But there is even with the current system, we have so many problems. The waiting time for the buses are so long. It takes 3 times longer than to take a bus if you compare to driving. And I think some of these problems don't need big budgets. They just need good management. And but definitely, my party supports public transportation and community-centered facilities.
Thank you. And Jane?
Thank you very much for the question. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, the #1 reason why I ran for MLA was to fix the traffic nightmare that we all live in here on the North Shore, and it's particularly the east of Seymour area, because we were just basically cut off from the rest of the North Shore if there was an accident on the bridge. And so that's well underway, and it's going to be very accommodating to cyclists as well as pedestrians, so very active transportation friendly. But I just wanted to correct something that Bowen said earlier with regards to the BC Liberals' commitment for public transit. The BC Liberals have built all of the public transit that is actually present right now. And I'm talking everything from the Canada line, the Evergreen line, the Millennial line, all of these very large infrastructure projects that accommodate rapid transit were built by the BC Liberals, including the C-Bus. So we very much support rapid transit. I put forward a recommendation to the INSTEP way back when for SkyTrain to the North Shore. And thankfully, we've got some movement and some studies. but there is no way that there's going to be a $1 billion tunnel underneath the Burrard Inlet. The solution for a rapid transit is to connect Phibbs Exchange, which is on the north end of the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge, to the SkyChain system that is over on the other side, either in Burnaby or in Vancouver. And we need to concentrate on an entire region of a plan so that for everybody from Langley to Vancouver to the North Shore, we need a concentrated regional plan that includes rapid transit that we can get done in the next 10 years, not in the next 30.
Thank you, Jane. And I just wanted to, I don't know if Bowen, you have something to add. I have a bit of a question in terms of, you know, rapid transit on the North Shore, and the question of how much and when wasn't really answered. So, you know, we hear that, you know, there may be a gondola going up the SFU mountain, and sometimes I wonder if that's going to happen before we get anything here on the North Shore. So if you can maybe address.
Yeah, so I can definitely answer that.
Yeah, the timing and the prioritization of this really important issue for the North Shore.
For sure. So the gondola is part of the 10-year mayor's plan already. And it was actually part of the investments that we're making today, $7.3 billion worth of transportation projects around the Lower Mainland. Those were part of a plan that the Lower Mainland mayors had put into a plan that they had been wanting to do since like 2010. Now, I will give credit where credit is due. I think the BC Liberals did definitely build the Canada line. Now, it's already over capacity, so it was quite underbuilt, and it was under P3, and it cost an arm and a leg to add service to it because of the way that they set up the contract, but it is built. But Evergreen Line, when Jane was talking about the Evergreen Line, you know, I was working on the Evergreen Line when I was an engineering student in 2004, and it just opened up a year ago. That's how long it took for them to build it, because they weren't committed to public transit here in the Lower Mainland. Rasood talked about how public transit is not just about the big projects. He is absolutely right. It is also about bus service, and it's also about bus service. Under phase 2 of the mayor's plan, because of what we've committed to the mayor's plan so far, the North Shore will see an increase of 16% in bus service. But you know how many extra bus hours were added to the full system of TransLink between 2009 and 2017, just before the election, when the BC Liberals were worried that the NDP was going to win, and they decided finally to invest a little bit in transit? How many hours total? 0. 0 hours. So don't tell me about your commitment to public transit. I know all about that commitment to public transit. BC Liberals would rather run a referendum than commit to public transit. So in terms of your question about timing though, this is a very, very new project. Gondola has been in the works for almost 10 years now, and in the plan for almost 10 years. Transit projects are decided upon by the Mayor's Council, which is 22 mayors in the region, and they have to agree on what comes next. This study is one of 2 studies that we are doing. The other one's an economic study that will enable the North Shore mayors to actually make a strong case on having rapid transit to the North Shore. But in the meantime, we have a lot of work to do as a community as well. And I'm very grateful that Jane is also in favor of rapid transit to the North Shore, because will not need, in order for us to actually get rapid transit to the North Shore, everybody's gonna have to work together. And we're gonna have to continue to push for it so that we can actually see it on some plans. But there's still lots of negotiation that has to happen right now. And we need to support our North Shore mayors in getting that done.
Thank you, Bowen. Does anybody want to jump in here, or shall we go to the next few questions? Okay, so the next few questions are individual questions. And the first one, Rasul, people criticize the Green Party for being a single issue party. Is the Green Party a single issue party, in your opinion? Other than the environmental priorities, what other issues motivates you to support the Green Party and in fact run for them?
Well, that is a misunderstanding and that it has historic reasons. That's a really good question, and thank you for the question. But when you talk about environment, it's not only the, I don't know, it's not only electric cars. It is the whole structure of the economy. We are proposing to change, to move away from oil-based economy in order to save the planet. We are in a crisis, but then what it means is that, yes, I have to be careful on how to live my life and save use less plastic or less gas, but the whole economy has to change. We have to diversify our economy. We have to move towards alternative energies. Look at British Columbia. There is so much potential for solar energy, wind energy, and even for farming. We have lots of potential for farming in British Columbia, but there are so many farmlands that hasn't been used. And one of the key issues that the Green Party is focusing on is sustainable farming, organic sustainable farming. Why should we import our food from Mexico and California, and while we have so many lands and we have such a good weather for farming? So I disagree with the fact with that, but I do understand that this is a misconception. The Green Party started with that movement, but it's more than that. And the main reason is that everything is intertwined. You cannot solve the climate crisis with one issue. It's the economy, it's politics, it's people's lifestyle, and it's our communities. Yes, that's a real good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasul. Any other responses from any other candidates before I ask Bowen your individualized question? No? Okay. So Bowen, there are many people, as you know, in the Iranian Canadian community who worked in the oil and gas industry. NDP opposes the Trans Mountain expansion. What can you say to the Iranian Canadians who are working or worked in this sector, who built their livelihood in this industry? What do you see for them in their transition, possibly beyond fossil fuels?
I think that the way that you phrased the question is absolutely, like, it's very good phrasing for it. A lot of people have built their lives and fed their families and closed their whole households off of a industry that we know we need to transition away from because of climate change, of course. And we need to be able to find ways to actually provide other opportunities for people in different industries. Now, having said that, the industry will continue on for some time. For better or for worse, we will have a fossil fuel industry for some time. The goal that governments should be aiming for is to make sure that we're not further expanding and further increasing our dependence on fossil fuels. It will eventually go the way of the dinosaurs, but in the meantime, we need to be preparing the new generation in new industries. We did oppose the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project because we did not believe it was the right project for British Columbians, and we thought that the risk was too great. But as many people will know, we fought it and we lost. And the federal government has said that the project will go through. And so that is the current state of that project there for people who are looking to maintain jobs on that project.
Thank you, Bowen. Does anybody else want to address this issue, Rasul or Jane?
May I go
Go ahead.
So this problem, I think, is a solved problem. In Germany, when they were trying to move away coal industry, they had lots of people working in that industry. They were experts, they were technicians. So what they did, they trained them towards new industries. For example, solar cell. Germany is huge in solar cell now, and those workers, they came from coal industry and oil and gas industry. So I would say what we have here is lots of potential for people to learn new techniques and to open a new life, new window to their family and to themselves and to their country. So I see it is an opportunity, and I don't see it as a problem. But we just need to look at what they did in Germany, and I'm not sure about China, but definitely in Germany they've done that.
I'm so grateful that Rasood brought that up. Absolutely. Worker training is so important, and it's actually in our platform as well to help focus retraining workers so that we can actually bring them into more sustainable sectors. Thank you, Rasood. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. Maybe I'll move on to Jane's question. So Jane, on the opioid crisis, could you please clarify your position on solutions to the crisis? Do you support safe supply of drugs as a solution, or do you recommend emphasizing treatment and recovery?
All of the above. I'm a supporter of the 4 pillars, and certainly harm reduction and safe supply and naloxone kits and overdose prevention sites would all come into that category of harm reduction. Obviously, we want to keep people alive, but what we haven't done a very good job of, and by the way, harm reduction and the declaration of the state of emergency, public state of emergency, was declared under our government in 2016. It was Dr. Terry Lake who instigated all those harm reduction measures, which this government is continuing. My issue is that there are 3 other pillars that we're not so good at: treatment, prevention, and enforcement. And we're not doing enough on those 3 pillars. We're not doing enough getting people into treatment, and arguably, we're not getting them into recovery as well, or even those opportunities for recovery. So what we have suggested is that there's immediate things that we can do to assist people. And the first thing that you could do is open up all the empty beds that sit empty in all of these treatment facilities that sit empty because they're not funded. There is no need to drastically increase capital expenditures, just simply open and fund the beds that lie empty today. But more long-term, we need a comprehensive mental health and addiction strategy. We need to ensure that when people want to get off drugs, when they want to go through detox, when they want to get into treatment, that treatment is available right then and right now. And then we have to ensure that treatment is seamless, because right now there's gaps in between different ways of navigating the system. So even if you did get somebody into detox, there is a waiting list to get them into treatment after that, and that's unsafe and also contributes to higher risk of overdoses. So a seamless and constructive and continuous system of care for those suffering from mental health and addictions that truly gets to the root of the addiction, and that could be pain, it could be trauma, it could be mental illness. There are all sorts of reasons why people have addictions, but getting to the root of the addiction is what we have to do. And currently, I don't see that happening right now. And even though we have a government with a separate ministry of mental health and addictions, the number of overdoses is going up, the number of non-fatal overdoses has gone up, and it's just tragic. And we need to put more emphasis and resources into helping people get well.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Does anybody want to jump in on this crisis, the other pandemic that we are facing? No? Okay, so I think that Maybe I'll just ask this. Dr. Henry favors decriminalization and safe supply. What are your thoughts, any of you, about that, and what is going to happen if you get into the government regarding decriminalization?
Growing up, this is really hard to share, but I'm going to say it. Growing up, my father became addicted to opium. And for such a long time, it was so hard for me to make peace with it. People, my friend, my classmate, they bullied me because my father was addicted, and it was a crime. So he couldn't even go and seek help for it. And over time, I make peace with the fact that it is not a crime; it is addiction. It's a disability, and I think decriminalization helps those families and those people who are involved in it to seek a better situation. They can open up. So many times the fact that we are sending police to the situation, someone is having some problems, and we should help send someone who is expert in helping those people rather than sending police. And it is a mental health crisis. And definitely, I agree with the idea of decriminalization.
Thank you, Rasul. Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you so much. And Rasul, thank you so much for sharing that story. It is a story that is far, far too common here in British Columbia, and certainly in communities, even on the North Shore as well. So many lives have been lost. And there isn't one magic bullet either. We've been fighting the overdose crisis on all fronts at once. And that's why our government was the first government in all of Canada to have the first Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. We've been trying to focus on prevention. We need to support and protect our kids. So we doubled youth treatment beds this year. We also are adding new beds and funding new beds for adults, including new First Nations treatment centers and new regulations to keep people safe. In terms of your specific question about decriminalization, yes, it is in our platform that that a re-elected BC-NDP government will fast track a move towards decriminalization in order to allow people to feel safe to come and ask for help. The problem is right now people don't feel safe. One of the problems is that people don't feel safe. There's stigma around the use of drugs, and when they're addicted and have a medical problem, it becomes very difficult for them to ask for help. We want to make sure that people first and foremost can actually ask for help when they need it, because that is the first step to recovery. So we'll work with the police chiefs to push Ottawa to decriminalize it. Criminalization is a federal issue, so that's why we can't say we will do it, because we have to convince the government of Canada to do it.
Thanks, Bowen. Jane, do you want to add to any of that?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that decriminalization is a federal issue, but there are things that we can do here in the province. I've spoken about drug courts before, that people can get diverted out of the justice system into the healthcare system. This is the whole advantage of decriminalization, is that people aren't criminalized for what is a health issue. Addiction is a health issue. So, but the problem is that we need to have the services available for people to go into. And that gets back to my previous point with regards to not having enough treatment facilities, not having a seamless system so that people can be diverted into the healthcare system and followed properly. One of the things that happens, tragic things that happens, is that if people are in a facility, and they're very expensive, in this province, you have to be either really rich or really poor to get into. You have to be on welfare or very rich to get into a treatment facility. And many times it's the mums and the dads that put second mortgages on their houses to pay for their sons, because it's usually the sons, to get into these facilities. But what we need to do is, as I said before, is ensure that these beds that sit empty because they're not funded are immediately opened and are properly funded. So it's not enough just to so-called go through decriminalization. You need to have the treatment facilities available, and we also need to ensure that people have a pathway to recovery, because recovery is possible. And I've talked to numerous people who have gone through recovery and are still going through recovery, and they're contributing members to society and back with their families, contributing to the economy and with their families, and have a much happier life. So it is possible, and we just have to help people to do so.
Thanks, Jane. And I also want to reiterate, we are very thankful, Rasul, for your sharing of your personal story here. It's very courageous of you to do that. I want to now move forward with some questions from the audience. Hopefully we have Marzieh Behati available to ask a question.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for giving me the chance to ask my question personally. And my question is about my son. My son was working as a contract for BC Wildfire Services. He died in May 2019 in a plane crash when the plane rental company's pilot was deemed negligent in the process. My son did not have any financial dependence. Under British Columbia's outdated legislation, surviving family members can't hold the wrongdoers accountable in a civil lawsuit. The Family Compensation Act doesn't recognize the human life value other than those resulting in direct financial damage. In most cases, and in our case, WorkSafe BC only pays for a fraction of the funeral service. Do you pledge, my question from the candidates is, do you pledge today to reform the BC Family Compensation Act and ensure that young people, children, people with disability, and elderly who do not have dependents have dignity and value in their life, even after death? Thank you for your answer.
Go ahead, all candidates, whoever wants to speak first. Jane, do you want to go first?
Well, I'd just like to say how sorry I am to hear that story, and it's tragic. I think what I would do in answer to that question is what I would always do is encourage you to come into the office, or during COVID, obviously we're doing everything by Zoom, and let's get to the bottom of this, because that might be something that the MLA's office could do and to assist you. We might need some help from our federal counterparts, our MPs, but this is something that certainly the MLA's offices should be able to assist you with.
Thank you, Jane. Bowen, do you have anything?
Yes, I am so sorry to hear. Well, I knew certainly about the loss of Amir Sidgi. I was there for one of his celebrations when we put him to rest. And I'd actually been in contact with the Sidgi family. So thank you so much for bringing up your question again. I think Jane is absolutely right. that where you need to go is your MLA's office. Now, I know that you reached out to my office, but if I remember correctly, your address actually puts you in Jane's office in North Vancouver, Seymour. And I'm so pleased that Jane has already committed to helping to follow up on this issue for you. Because while we did try to take on or rather we received the issue from you, your local MLA is your best advocate for that. So at the end of the election, when we know who the MLA is of North Vancouver Seymour, you definitely need to redirect that inquiry to them again. And in the meantime, again, you can always reach out to me to have this conversation because we have connected in the past on this, and it was just an incredibly heartbreaking situation when it happened, a terrible tragedy. Thank you so much, Jane, for your compassion on this, because I know that the Segi family is, they're wonderful, wonderful constituents of yours, and they definitely deserve support.
Thanks, Bowen. Anything to add, Rasul, before I go to another question from the audience here?
I just want to say I'm really sorry. It is a very tragic situation, and I'm sure your MLA will be involved in this. I hope that's the case, and I'm so sorry about this.
Okay, there are a few questions here. I'm going to pick one that is a little different from what we've been talking about. Can the candidates explain their plans for affordable housing and rental increase rates or freezes?
The Green Party was released their plan for rental situation. People who pay more than 30% of their income for their rent, they will receive funding from the government. And for my personal approach is, I think we need to build more affordable houses, and I'm definitely interested in co-op housing that are owned by individuals. And one of the issues in North Shore area, if they build more houses, then you bring more people. So you have to be mindful of the fact that if you bring more people here, you bring facilities for them. You don't want the new people to go and use the pre-existing facilities and put more burden on those facilities. So, and the best solution for me, I guess, if you ask me, is co-op housing, which are sustainable, and they come with their own community, and they have their own childcare facilities, and they don't put more pressure on the community.
Thank you, Rasul. Bowen?
So housing affordability was one of the major issues that we focused on as a government over the last 3 years. And what we found was a market that was absolutely out of control, where regular families could not afford to buy their own home, where renters were constantly on the verge of being very insecure housing, and young people my age and younger will probably eventually forget what it means to have a driveway and what stairs are, because we're all in condos or in small apartments. This work, or rather this issue, developed over a long time. And it was due to what I believe and what we believe was inaction under the BC Liberal government that allowed for housing prices to skyrocket, that allowed for speculators to take over the market here in British Columbia. So over the last 3 years, we've been focusing on trying to stabilize the market. That's why we brought in the speculation and vacancy tax, so that people who had multiple homes, who were leaving them empty, would be taxed and encouraged to put them out on the market. We also increased the foreign buyers tax up to 20%. Now, in addition to a lot of these measures, so for instance, we also cracked down on criminal money laundering. And so we're actually launching a public inquiry into what happened with criminal money laundering and how they've impacted the real estate market. But in addition to trying to moderate the market, we've also wanted to build more housing. And so that's by working with developers to encourage more purpose-built rental housing to be built. And we also introduced funds to help support the creation of subsidized housing as well at a rate that is really quite extraordinary. Over the last over the last 3 years, we've initiated 25,000 units of housing under the BC, through these funds. There's the supportive housing fund, which provides housing for people of very low income who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness. And then there's the community housing fund that provides housing that goes for as low as $375 a month. So truly affordable housing. And I've been very pleased that we've so far been able to fund 3 projects of that kind here on the North Shore, about 300 units, but there's still more to do because 300 units isn't enough. So we want to continue to build more housing. We want to keep up the measures that we know have worked to moderate the market so that we can actually ensure that housing is for homes, not for speculators.
Thank you very much, Bowen. Jane?
Well, I'd just like to clarify about the speculation tax. The speculation tax that the NDP brought forward has nothing to do with speculation. We know that it's like a cabin tax or a wealth tax on people's homes. And what the BC Liberals have brought forward is actually an anti-flipping properties tax. So people cannot speculate and purchase a property and then sit on it for a while, do nothing, and then flip it and make a profit. That is actually going to affect and change the ability for people to make money on a property. So that was a private member's bill that was brought forward by the BC Liberal government several months ago. And unfortunately, the NDP did not bring it to the legislature for debate. The other issue that's really affecting housing affordability is strata insurance rates. We have brought forward another private member's bill to alleviate that because strata insurance has just skyrocketed. I live in a strata and mine has gone up like 100% in the last few years. It's absolutely unbelievable. And a lot of people that have strata properties are seniors with fixed incomes, and they simply can't afford all of this insurance. So this is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. And I think that you will be hearing more about that in our platform. We have not released our platform yet. That's, I believe, coming this week. So you can check that out. But I absolutely think that housing affordability is a huge issue, not just here on the North Shore, but in the entire metro region.
Thank you, Jane, and you're on time.
Sorry, before we go to the next question, can I ask everyone to be for the group photo? If you're willing to be there, can you please turn on your camera and we take the group photo as per instructions from Mr. Setri. I have to take 2 because we have 2 big frames here. So the first one, 1, 2, and 3. Everyone ready? And here goes the second one. 1, 2, and 3. Awesome. Sorry, Shervin, go ahead, please.
No problem. That actually sounds like an old camera. I don't know what you've got there. Okay, let me go to this other question, which is interesting. What do you know about the state of legal aid in BC, and what does your party plan to do if elected to fund legal aid adequately, ensuring access to justice for vulnerable members of our society? Who wants to go first? Last time we went with Russell's, and then previously that was Jane. So Bowen, it's your turn.
Thank you so much for this question. We have a wonderful Attorney General, David Eby, who has actually been working very hard to enhance access to justice. So he's been providing more funding for legal clinics, and also improving access. And this is actually really exciting work and very, very important work. He's been doing work to improve access to legal supports for Indigenous people as well. So we've actually signed agreements with the First Nations Justice Center to produce more access, more centers throughout the province, specifically to help Indigenous people access legal programs. Now, I have to admit that this is not a file that I am very an expert on. And so I won't be able to list off all of the work that we have done, but certainly the Attorney General, David Eby, has been working very, very hard to try to improve access to legal services for vulnerable people. So in my office, we often hear from very vulnerable people who have difficulty in family cases, who have difficulty trying to access supports when they're being treated unfairly by landlords for tenants, as an example, especially low-income tenants. And we've been very fortunate on the North Shore to have a wonderful legal clinic over at the North Shore Resource Center. And we've used them a lot, and they definitely deserve a lot more funding. Even with the supports that we have added over the last 3 years, there needs to be a lot more.
Thanks, Bowen. Maybe Jane, you can go next if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't really have anything further to add, except for to say, as I reiterated before, that this is something that individual MLA offices can assist people with. And our platform, the BC Liberal platform, will be coming out shortly. And I would say stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. Rasul, anything to add there?
Well, this is not my area of expertise, but I think the situation we are in is not fair, and hopefully it's going to be changed, whoever is elected, and that the government will do something.
Thank you. There's a question here about vaping in schools. So what is your party doing to prevent or stop vaping at schools? Maybe we'll start with you, Rasul.
It is young people. They are interesting. They have lots of new ideas, and when it comes to vaping, it hurts me. When I see younger people vaping on the street, it's really bothering me. We should do something about this, but I am not sure how if it's a provincial issue on how we can implement policies that can help the situation, but definitely we can increase the tax on these kind of products, and also we can actually maybe do educate people so that they don't they learn about the side effect of vaping, and hopefully that solves the problem.
Okay, thank you. Jane, do you want to go next? Address the vaping in schools?
Yeah, thank you. My colleague, Todd Stone, actually, who has 3 teenage daughters, is very concerned about this issue, and actually did put forward another private member's bill to try and rectify the issue. I know for a fact that it's very, very serious. We had in my riding that made national news, Seacove School, where the school closed the bathrooms because the kids were sneaking into the bathrooms to vape. So I know it's a huge issue in the schools. These little vape things, you can use them without getting caught, without the smell. The kids, I hear, make jokes on how they can hide it from the teacher or whatever. So it's definitely a serious issue. But I think getting to the root of the problem again as to why kids are vaping, is it just to go against mom and dad, or is it anxiety, a way to self-medicate if kids are depressed? Again, then what we have to do is get to the root of it to prevent it to begin with. And certainly more mental health supports in the schools is definitely called for. But then if they are already hooked, then of course we have to have addiction treatment for these youth. And right now we don't really have specialized addiction treatment centers for youth to do with nicotine or vaping. Some of these kids are vaping also cannabis, which is another issue. But again, it comes down to the availability of teen-specific addiction centers that they can access for youth. And I know the Foundry, something that I worked very hard to get, not just in North Van, but also in other cities, does have substance use services. And I would advise that parents, if they have a child that they're worried about vaping, is perhaps contact Foundry.
Thank you so much, Jane. Bowen, anything
this is a very timely issue, timely question, because we are actually bringing in force regulations to fully implement what is a leading edge vaping action plan. So this was passed by all parties, all political parties, back in late 2019. And those regulations came fully into force just about 2-3 weeks ago. So the regulations restrict the content, flavoring, packaging, and advertising and sale of vapor products in British Columbia. It also enables, or rather the plan also includes, that the BC Ministry of Health and Education will establish a provincial youth advisory council to develop and launch a strategy to help talk to kids about and educate kids about the dangers of vaping. But before these regulations, and this was rightly brought up by, again, people from all parties, that there were stores that were selling bubblegum flavored vaping products. And they said that they weren't targeting it at kids, but I mean, that's a pretty, I haven't eaten bubblegum flavored much of anything since I was a very young person. And I definitely have run into young people who are enjoying those kinds of flavored products. And so those flavored products are no longer legal to be sold here in BC, but there's still more to do. And that's why there needs to be an education plan, an education strategy that will be rolled out in schools, and that is happening.
Okay, thank you, Bowen. Here's a good question. I think a couple of people have asked it. So why are we having an election, an early election in the middle of a pandemic here? Maybe Bowen, I'll get you to go first and then I'll get Solo, Jane.
For sure. I mean, British Columbians have worked really hard to do well in COVID-19. But we also know that this pandemic will be with us for not just 1 year, this pandemic will be with us for at least 1 year or more. And the problems that have been caused by the pandemic will last not just for 1 year, but for many years. So no matter when an election is called, whether it was this year or next year, COVID-19 will be with us. And we managed to do, as the BC NDP minority government, we managed to do very well in a minority situation for 3 years. But the reality is, when Dr. Andrew Weaver resigned as BC Green leader in earlier this summer, things did change, and government did struggle to pass legislation, even though we had agreement from our partners prior to tabling that legislation. And so British Columbians really deserve better than that. They deserve a strong, stable government that can take action for them, one with a mandate that British Columbians were given a choice on. We've done very well so far, dealing with the realities of the pandemic and supporting people through very difficult times. But as we look forward into the future, British Columbians deserve to have a choice as to what direction we move in and what our recovery looks like, because it's a much larger question that was never asked of people. I think that the choice in this election is clear. I think that we need to keep moving forward as a province with the BC NDP, but it's not my decision that matters, it's yours. And even though it is definitely a very difficult election to run in when there's a snap election, like I'm still scrambling to get things ready, and that's not very fun, of course. But at the very end of the day, I would much rather a leader that would give the choice back to people in an election, rather than a leader that we see in some other countries that are using a pandemic as an excuse to delay or even cancel elections, because elections are about providing people with power. And that kind of power we can't take for granted. I believe in our democracy, and I'm very pleased to be able to participate in it.
Thanks, Boyne, for answering that. Maybe I'll go to Rasul. There were some comments made regarding the Greens, and then we'll go to Jane.
I simply think that is a power grab movement. Unfortunately, in this situation, we shouldn't be going through this elections during this pandemic. We have opioid crisis. We have so many problems, and NDP was a party which was promoting for proportional representation. And the best thing that can happen to British Columbia, if you ask me or most of people, it is the minority government, in which the people can collaborate with each other and solve problems. Of course, Andrew Weaver resigned, but everything was going smoothly. Sonia had met Horgan. They had a conversation. And everything was a surprise to the Green Party, and because we, everyone was thinking, even Liberal were collaborating with the other two parties. So it was the best kind of government. I think it was democracy. Everything was happening. The COVID, we were addressing all the problems in the COVID, and we were about to come out of this situation very smoothly, and we could have another election on time. It is against my will to take off from my work and participate in this election. I was thinking about running in elections, but not in such a short time. And people are even some of them are mad, and I understand why they are mad, because there are more important things to be taken care of. But we are in this situation, and I think it is a lesson for us when it comes to learning about a party that is advocating for something, but in practice they show something else. And I definitely agree, we shouldn't be going through these elections.
Thank you, Rasul. And Jane, you want to address that?
Yeah, I do agree with Rasul, and you know, Sonia Furstenov, the leader of the Green Party, has made it really, really clear that she met with John Horgan the Friday before he called the election and said, we're in it for the long term until the fixed election date, which is in October of next year. And nobody wants an election. I've been doing a bit of door knocking at a safe distance with a mask. And I can tell you that nobody wants this election. And they are, I agree with Rasul, they're mad. Like, why are we in the middle of an election? And there's only one reason why we're in the middle of an election, is because of what Rasul said. It's a power grab. John Horgan looked at the polls and went, hey, I'm Mr. Popularity. I'm going to call a snap election and catch everybody off guard. It is a fact that way back in March, all parties got together and voted with this government, supported this government with $5 billion for the budget. And that included an economic plan for COVID recovery, which we just saw released today or yesterday. So they've been hanging on to this money all of these months, not helping small businesses, not actually helping people, but waiting for an election call to snap it and give us the money that was already approved by all of the three parties in March. The other issue is that the NDP have broken the agreement between them and the Greens that got them government. They broke it. They said, poof, we want an election. We don't want the Greens anymore. And so it was a total betrayal to them. They broke their own fixed election date, which was October of 2021. That was their legislation. They asked for it. And as Rasul said, a couple of years ago, we were all in the middle of a PR referendum because the NDP and the Greens wanted minority governments and everybody working together. So this directly contradicts 2 years later what the NDP wanted. So I agree that it's a power grab, and the only thing that we're doing right now in the middle of a pandemic, having an election, is so that John Horgan can get a majority.
Thanks, Jane. I don't know if Bowen, you want to...
Yes, of course. I mean, of course, I expected that to be the answer from Rasul and Jane, and so I'm not going to try to change their minds. I know I can't change their minds. At the end of the day, it wasn't my decision. I'm doing the best that I can with the context that we live in right now. But I do have to say to Rasul, you weren't there. With all due respect, you haven't been sitting in the legislature. Even when the BC NDP and the BC Greens were at our strongest, we were still always on a razor's edge of being able to actually produce results for British Columbians. We were always one Fogden airport away from losing a vote. We were one healthcare crisis away from losing a vote, one technical glitch away from losing the vote, because the votes in the House were very, very tight. I had a colleague who needed open heart surgery, and in a very dark, I guess, silver lining, the BC Liberals also had a colleague who needed a triple heart bypass surgery at the same time. And that's one of the only reasons why we managed to get through that time. I had a colleague who developed prostate cancer and required immediate surgery, and he pushed his own surgery off for several months in order to make sure we had our votes. We almost lost a confidence vote once because one of my older colleagues went to the bathroom at the wrong time. Even when we were at our strongest, we were always very, very close to losing a vote. And so when the relationship with the Greens changed, it did change the calculation, absolutely. That's why Andrew Weaver, the former Green Party leader who signed the CASA agreement with John Horgan, he himself said that he understood why John Horgan called an election. And he himself is supporting John Horgan right now in this election because he knows that that is the right way forward for the province.
Thank you, everyone. Good, lively discussion there. I'm gonna, I think next in line is Amir. Rasul, did you want to say, respond to that?
I just want to say one, I wasn't there, but I feel for you. I'm sure it was tough, but that's the whole idea of collaborating with another party. It's democracy. It takes time to come to the same page, and this is how we build a democracy. And if it is up to one party, we don't. I cannot trust one majority government, and I think I cannot convince you. But I think for me personally and for the Green Party, the best option for British Columbia is minority government, in which politicians go through tough time and to make decisions, because you are making decisions for people who you have to consider the whole society. And how do you make one decision for the whole society? Of course, you are going to sacrifice something. And through a collaboration, everything comes up, and you have to make sure that you be patient, and finally good things happen. But I definitely, and I will thank you for your hard work as an MLA, and I really respect you. But the situation, I would say, would have been much better if we didn't have this these elections at this time.
I wish that everything had been as strong as when we started. Trust me, because I actually think that the BC NDP and BC Greens did fantastic work. And you're right, this isn't about politicians. And I didn't bring up those examples because of politicians. What I was trying to explain is that British Columbians deserve a stronger government than that. We need to be able to ensure that we are actually able to act on behalf of British Columbians during this time of emergency. They deserve that.
I think strength is in diversity, not in majority.
Okay.
Can I just, so with all due respect, Bowen, you're saying that British Columbians need a stronger government right now, whereas 2 years ago, you were begging for a for a proportional representation to go to minority governments because of the so-called collaboration. The fact is, and Sonia Furstenau has been very, very clear about this, very clear, that she was collaborating with John Horgan, that she did not want an election, and that we know that the CASA agreement makes it so that the Greens would never, ever vote against a confidence vote to bring down the government for the NDP. That was the deal that everybody signed, the Greens and the NDP signed. So you can't have it both ways. We know the reason why there's an election that's being called. We know. And it's not just me, it's not just the BC Liberals, it's not just the Greens, it's the media, and everybody at the door that I talk to says the same thing. It's because John Horgan wants a power grab and he wants to get a majority. That's the reason why we're in the middle of an election.
Thank you, Jane. I think we all are quite educated about everyone's position here. So I'm gonna move on, lively discussion. Thank you. We've got a few minutes left. I've got Amir in the queue. Amir, I think you have a question. That'll be probably the last question. So go ahead, Amir. And then we'll just maybe give all the candidates like one last goodbye opportunity, and then we'll end the night. Okay, go ahead, Amir.
Thank you, Shervin. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This was definitely very educating. I want to squeeze in a little bit of comments that I see here as well. That Ms. Behari asked if there's a support for reform to the BC Family Compensation Act to allow to bring us in line with other provinces. This was one little explanation. But going to my question, I had the honor of hosting Bowen and Jane for the kickoff of Farsi Dar BC campaign in 2018, and I was grateful, and so was our community, for their support to bring Farsi as a second language option to BC schools. We were fortunate to get the support, the blessing of Burnaby School District to have that implemented. And we're working hard to get that through other school districts as well. But my question is, if either one of the parties, the Greens, NDP, or Liberals, form governments, what is your expected timeline to make this a reality for us all, and to have Farsi added as the 10th second language option in the schools, available to all interested students in British Columbia?
Sure, yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, because I supported it, as you know, during that event that you had. I think that, if memory serves me correctly, we actually put it in one of our motions for our convention, our BC Liberal convention. So I think I'm definitely supportive. The only thing that I would say, because I was a school trustee, so I was a trustee for the Board of Education in North Van, is that we would have to work with the Board of Educations. Certainly in the North Shore, i.e. North Vancouver and West Vancouver, as well as Coquitlam, have probably the largest Persian communities in the province. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that those are the three main school districts that would have the most interest in doing this. So I think we would have to go through the school districts and ensure that they had the teachers that they needed, because it's one thing to have a course that's mandated or made available, or board approved. That's what they call it when they're board approved. But it's another thing to get the proper teachers that are credentialed, which of course goes back to the other conversation, the first conversation we had in this evening. So definitely, that would be something that I would be happy to work with our school districts. And in my case, the school district in my riding is the North Vancouver School District.
Thanks so much, Jane. Bowen?
Yes, Amir, thank you for your question. And as you know, we started working on this issue together even back in 2016, before I became an MLA. You and I were out on the streets trying to get people to sign petitions in order to try to get Farsi into schools. And I'm so pleased that you've been able to create Farsi Dar BC as well. If you'll remember, when the beginning of my MLA term, I also went out to try to start to talk to people about putting Farsi into the schools, but you had just launched the Farsi Dar BC organization, and you asked me to hold off to let the organization figure out which direction it needed to go, and that you would come back to me to let me know when you needed my help. And I'm still waiting for you to come back to me to see what I can do. But I mean, Jane laid out the process. She's correct that it is the board of the education boards need to be involved in this. And I think you've got a lot of allies here on the North Shore who will help you when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Bowen. Rasul, your response to for CEDAR BC?
First, I want to thank Amir for his all work, and he's great. He's doing great for the community, and I really like what he's doing. Yeah, and yeah, as Jane mentioned, the bottleneck of this issue are the teachers. In fact, specialized teachers are the bottleneck for our education system, and it was unfortunate that we didn't talk about education system tonight. I had a lot to talk about education, but yes, one of the key parts are the teachers, and I think I hope this is going to happen as soon as possible.
Thank you, Rasul, and that basically brings us to the end of this session. I'm going to ask the candidates on the panel if you have any departing statements. Go ahead. Otherwise, from my point of view, I think that the session went really well. We learned a lot about your different positions and your different platforms. So thank you for your participation, and I want to thank the audience. We had very strong numbers here tonight. So thanks for taking a couple of hours out of your busy nights and joining us tonight as well. Rasul, you wanted to say something?
I would like to thank you for and Amir and Saraye Iran for organizing this event. I really enjoyed having this conversation, and I learned stuff during this conversation. I would like to say the Green Party is about three main pillars: ecological wisdom, non-violence, social justice, sustainability, participatory democracy, and respect for diversity. And one of the things that is in danger now is participatory democracy during these snap elections. And I feel like the values that I care about are undermined, and that's why I am running. And I hope people make the right decisions when it comes to this election. It's very important to get to know who you vote for, who was committed to what, and how they proceed. And also I want to mention, as I said, Green Party is not a single issue party. It's about sustainability. It's about a different economy, an economy which is not based on oil and gas. It's a diverse economy in which everyone is enjoying their life, and also we are living in a happy planet. And again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to express my ideas.
Thank you, Rasul. Bowen, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I want to thank all of the organizers for all of your work to organize this discussion. It's actually an interesting mix, myself, Jane, and Rasul, because none of us are actually running against each other. We're all running in different ridings. And so it's been a fantastic opportunity to learn from my colleagues here and also from you as well. I think that John Horgan and the BCNDP, we're a government that has led with our hearts and our heads, because we know that our communities are stronger when we stand together, and we can't stand by when our neighbors are in pain. We must support each other. We must care for one another. And that's the way that we have led in this province. We face really big challenges over the next 4 years with COVID. The question British Columbians need to ask themselves is, where do they want to go, and who do they want to lead them? John Horgan and our BCNDP will always keep working for you, no matter what. And I believe that together we can keep BC moving forward for everybody.
Thank you, Bowen. Jane?
I also would like to thank the organizers very much, and you've got a good crowd out there, so good networking, and thank you very much for the opportunity to answer some questions. I'm just really pleased and have been pleased to be your MLA for North Vancouver Seymour for 11 years, I guess it is. Accomplished a lot. I mentioned some of the accomplishments with regards to the highway infrastructure and healthcare and actually schools. But I think that it's not done. The work is not done yet. And I want to continue. And I think particularly with COVID, we need to focus on economic recovery. And the BC Liberals are known for being a good stewards of the economy and supporting our small businesses and supporting people to be able to afford what they need to take care of their families. And what you'll be seeing in the next couple of days, I think, is an outline of the BC Liberal platform that will help inform you in your decision making when you get to the voting booth. But thank you very much for the opportunity, and I really appreciate you listening to all of the candidates, and certainly for North Vancouver Seymour, I would very much appreciate your vote.
So with this, we bring our night to an end. I just want to again thank everyone for your participation, the excellent questions, and the excellent answers we received. Good night.